Hey everyone, I'm here today to do my September wrap-up. I can't believe it's the end of September already. Now this month was pretty good. I ended up reading 5 books in total. The first book was a manga. It was the second volume of Sailor Moon. Don't want to go too much into it in case you haven't read the first one. Essentially, I'm really enjoying the series. It is different than the TV show, which I'm really enjoying. You kind of get a different perspective. So I'll be continuing on with that throughout the rest of the year. Now the second book I read was called Love and Other Impossible Pursuits by Ayelet Waldman. And this is more famously known from the movie called The Other Woman starring Natalie Portman. Now the book essentially takes place set in New York about a woman who has an affair with a married man. He ends up leaving his wife, and this is all backstory. She ends up getting a stepson, and they also fall pregnant. And it just basically follows the events that, happen after that point. And it's just a really interesting book. It's contemporary. It's not, I wouldn't call it chick lit. It's just a contemporary book that really kind of analyzes and goes over the challenges of mixed families and what happens after an affair and just the complexities and the complications. People's main complaint with this book was that the main character is quite unlikable at times. She's not a perfect woman. She at times can be the evil stepmother. And you kind of have to buy into her imperfect life if you can't get past the fact that she had this affair and ended up marrying this guy and basically is a homewrecker. If you can't get past this, don't read the book. If you really just like books about people and relationships and don't mind kind of looking at the muddier side of life, I definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. Again, if you can kind of get past the complexities of the book, highly recommend it to anyone who thinks they might be interested in that one. Beyond that, I read, and this took up most of my month, George R. R. Martin's A Clash of Kings, which of course is the second book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. Thoroughly enjoyed this one. Won't go into too much detail because of course it's a sequel and I don't want to spoil anything. I will say I didn't like it quite as much as a Game of Thrones, and it might be a little bit, I tend to not like sequels as much as I like the original piece. I find I don't read a lot of series, so that might be some of it. My main complaint was that there's a lot of action in this book that you hear about from someone who actually wasn't in the battle. So you hear about someone telling a report about a battle that happened somewhere, and I'd rather see it from a first-person perspective. Just my 2 cents there. Otherwise, I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of good character development, a lot of funny scenes, certainly lots of dark matter in these books. You can tell the story's really getting going. The first book felt like a lot of setup. This one, the story is definitely in full swing. I can't wait to get started reading A Storm of Swords. The next book that I read was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and this is the first time I've read this classic. I have to say I didn't enjoy it as much as other classics I've read this year. My main complaint, it's not even a complaint, I just didn't find the characters or the story very relatable. A lot of classics I find I can see a lot of universal truths or messages that really speak to me or just talk about society as a whole, and I just didn't find this one quite as relevant. I'd be curious what other people thought of this book. I want to reread it. I feel like I didn't get quite everything out of the book. I think if I read it again, knowing how it ends, I would get a lot more out of it the second time around. Now the last book I read this month, I just finished today, and that is I Don't Know How She Does It by Allison Pearson. And this is a book about a working mother. I believe she lives in England, and essentially it's just talking about someone who essentially tries to have it all, as the quote goes, and work and be a full-time, obviously be a full-time worker and mother and still have a life, and just trying to excel in all the areas of her life. And what I absolutely loved about this book was the constant list making. My life is relatively simple, but I completely related to that never-ending to-do list. Every chapter ended with her coming up with a list of things that you need to remember to do, or follow-up calls, or something to do with work or home, and I completely related to that. I unfortunately started to like this book a little bit less as I went on. I found Allison Pearson's writing to actually be really funny. A lot of the lines she has in there, I found myself chuckling to myself. They were really enjoyable. She's a very funny writer. However, what she ended up writing, like some of the plot lines that go on in the book and some of the details, really cast a bad light on motherhood and working mothers and stay-at-home mothers, and really just cast a bad light on marriage after children. And I just felt like it had a lot of negativity around it. When I expected this book to kind of be a comic relief to mothers, but I don't know, I can see why there's a lot of controversy around this book. But overall, it was a good reading month. Those were the 5 books that I read. I was super happy to get through Clash of Kings because that was such a giant book, and I did actually have time to read other things at the same time. Now for October, I decided not to do a full TBR. I'm going to try backing away from that just because there's something about having a TBR list that just takes the fun out of choosing your next book sometimes. I kind of know what I want to read right now, but I don't know what I'm going to want to read, 2 or 3 weeks from now, so I'm going to try to leave it a little bit more up in the air. Instead, I'm going to try doing what I've seen other people do online, is to do kind of just showing what they're currently reading. And then mid-month, I'll either do a Friday Reads or maybe a library haul and kind of update you once I decide what to read at the end of the month. So right now, I kind of have 2 books that I'm going to be starting. And you've seen these before. The first is Margaret Atwood's The Edible Woman. It is considered, I believe, to be a bit of a modern classic about a young woman who's getting married and ends up feeling consumed in the process and essentially stops eating. I've always wanted to read this one. I think I've already read The Handmaid's Tale, but I think I'll actually enjoy this one even more than The Handmaid's Tale. So really excited to get started on this one. And the other one I've also mentioned before is You by Austin Grossman. And this has been compared to Ready Player One, although I've been told that it's actually quite different. It's about a video game programmer. There's a death in the software company and he goes to investigate. So a lot of nerdy references apparently, 80s pop culture. And I just have to check it out. I have to see what's in there for myself. Hopefully I enjoy it, and that'll get me started for the month. Definitely I'll be coming back with some sort of video because that won't last me for the whole month of October. But that's it for now. Everyone have a good week. I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.